Have you ever wondered what it would take to open your own restaurant? Well, after years of cooking at home, working in multiple restaurants, and even running my own pizza pop-up, I couldn't stop thinking about that question. So in January 2025, I decided to invest over $100,000 and open my very first restaurant here in Cleveland, Ohio. And in this video, I'm going behind the scenes to show you exactly what it took to get to this point where we're finally open, the surprising challenges I faced along the way, and what you need to know if you ever want to open a restaurant of your own. Now maybe you're thinking, nah, I'll never want to open a restaurant. Well, believe it or not, that's exactly what I thought for most of my life. As much as I loved cooking, and especially making bread and pizza, I never imagined myself opening a restaurant. But that all changed about 3 years ago when I moved here to Cleveland with my wife. You see, one of our favorite things to do together is explore local restaurants and basically just eat great food. So within our first year here, we visited around 100 different restaurants, but pretty quickly we noticed a pattern. And there was one particular night that took me over the edge. You see, there was one restaurant that quite a few people in the area had recommended to us, so we saved it for a special date night outing. And keep in mind, this wasn't a cheap restaurant. We were paying upwards of $50 per person. So I ordered a salmon dish with mashed sweet potatoes and roasted veggies. And when the food finally came, I couldn't wait to dig in. But as soon as I took that first bite, I was just disappointed. The salmon was overcooked and everything was underseasoned. I mean, salting your food properly is the most basic cooking principle, and the fact that this restaurant couldn't get that right, especially at such high prices, was just mind-boggling to me. And over the coming months, this became a regular occurrence. Very few restaurants were even seasoning their food properly, let alone getting anything else right. Which got me thinking that if these restaurants can stay in business and people even like them, what would happen if I opened a restaurant here that's actually good? Now don't get me wrong, my wife and I have since found a few decent restaurants around here, but still nearly none of them are particularly affordable, because not everyone can justify spending upwards of $30 or $40 for a single meal. And most don't want to wait hours just to get a table on a busy night, myself included. So this got my wheels turning even more. And having taken some trips to New York over the past few years, I really started to crave that sort of affordable yet high quality street food that's so prevalent over there. And I felt there was one thing in particular that this city was missing most: truly great pizza by the slice. Because while there were a couple solid pizzerias in the city, they were all full service restaurants that were pretty hard to get into, and none of them sold slices. So I saw my opportunity and took action. First, I got a job at a local pizzeria just to see if I would actually like working in a restaurant. And immediately, I fell in love with it. It was a feeling I had never felt at work before. I mean, it didn't even feel like work. It just felt like I was meant to be there. So while I was working there, I also started a pizza pop-up to get experience running my own food business. So I set up an LLC, got all of my licenses, and managed my finances just how I would if I were to open my own restaurant. And again, right away, it just felt like it was what I was meant to be doing. As soon as I saw that very first customer take a bite, their face lighting up with joy, it was like a fulfillment I had never felt before. And not only that, but the feedback I got on the pizza was incredible. People were saying it was some of the best they had ever had. So it turned out that I wasn't alone, that Cleveland did in fact crave good pizza. And from then on, I made it my mission to bring great pizza by the slice to the city. So I started looking for properties. I searched the internet, reached out to landlords, even walked the streets scoping places out. Because the thing was, I just didn't have the money to build out a space from scratch. What I really wanted was a second generation restaurant, or in other words, a space where the plumbing, electrical, hoods, and everything else a restaurant needs to operate were already in place. So 3 months passed, and nothing I had found was quite ideal. Then 6 months, then a year, and before I knew it, it had been over a year and a half, and I still hadn't found anything that seemed even slightly promising. It got to the point that I actually gave up trying to open a restaurant in Cleveland altogether, because as much as I knew the city needed it, it just didn't seem like it was going to work out for me. So my wife and I were just about ready to move to a whole different city where I could possibly make it happen. But then in June 2024, that all changed. One day I was sitting on the couch scrolling through Instagram and I saw a headline: "Pizzeria on East 4th Street downtown to close." Now, I had learned by this point not to get my hopes up, but at the same time, for the by the slice pizzeria that I was looking to open, this was about as ideal as it gets. It was a pretty small spot, so the overhead would be low. It was downtown, so we'd have the foot traffic that we need. Not to mention, the previous pizzeria was already selling pizza by the slice, so the place was perfectly set up for it. Plus, it happened to be owned by the same pizzeria that I used to work at, so I already knew the owners. So immediately I reached out, and sure enough, they were interested in talking. So I toured the space, and while it definitely needed a lot of cleaning and a bit of a facelift, I could see the potential. And while all of that would cost some money for sure, the biggest advantage of this space place was that they were keeping the oven in there along with the spiral mixer, coolers, hood, and pretty much everything else that the next tenant might want to keep. So I figured that if the rent and other lease terms were reasonable, I'd pretty much have no choice but to move forward with it. However, commercial leases are not my area of expertise. And in fact, I'd never even read one before, let alone negotiated on my own behalf. Fortunately though, a couple months back, I'd come across this guy Dale, aka the Lease Coach. Basically, he's a consultant who works with potential tenants like myself to help them negotiate their leases to get the most favorable terms possible. So not only did he help me to negotiate for 2 months of free rent after opening, but we also got rid of a lot of the other unfavorable portions of the lease, like restrictions on my operating hours and things like that. He helped me out a ton, so I can wholeheartedly recommend him if you're looking to lease a commercial property. Just tell him I sent you and he'll get you set up. Now fast forward about 4 months after that initial reach out to the landlord, I had finally signed the lease. It took that long just to get everything squared away and written in a way that both parties were happy with. So this was about mid-October 2024, and from here I had 3 months to actually open. Now, if you did see my last video, you know pretty much what I did leading up to the opening. I documented it all on my Instagram and summarized it in that video, so I'll leave a link below in case you haven't seen it yet. But of course, the first major hurdle with any new restaurant is funding. Now, obviously, I had a plan for this before signing the lease, or else I wouldn't have signed it. But basically, I had 4 forms of funds. Some personal funds, a couple small loans and investments from family members, a small business loan, which I was very fortunate to secure through a local organization here in Cleveland, and finally my Kickstarter campaign. So some of you may have seen me mention it here, but basically on Kickstarter I offered rewards like gift cards to the restaurant, discounted pizza making classes, and so on. So again, I truly appreciate everyone who supported. It played a huge role in actually making this place possible, so again, thank you. And now with my funding secured and the lease signed, I could get to work on getting this place ready to open. And since it was a pizzeria before, I could basically just clean up the place and open right back up if I wanted to. However, I'm a firm believer that every detail matters. The restaurant business is not an easy business to be in, so in order to ensure success, I need to make sure that we're not just another restaurant. So the food and menu was of course my #1 focus, but I also created a pretty robust social media marketing plan for the restaurant, which is something that's super important these days, but that I think a lot of restaurants overlook. My wife was basically the designer of the project, if you will, since she has a better eye for that type of stuff than I do. Essentially, we wanted the place to be fun, clean, and modern, with some nostalgic elements as well that sort of bring our personalities into it. So construction-wise, there were a few things I knew I needed to get done, and a few things that I was hoping to get done if my budget and time allowed. The biggest thing here was cleaning. This place was in pretty rough shape when I took it over, so I knew it would require a lot of work. But even so, I severely underestimated the sheer amount of elbow grease that we would have to put into it. Before I could even do that though, my first major task was refinishing basically all the wood surfaces in this place. And in order to save on budget, I figured I'd do it myself. So after lots of trips to Home Depot for wood stripping and sanding materials and countless long, grueling hours, I got the surfaces down to their natural wood finish, which was exactly what I was looking for. So I got it done just in time before the cleaning crew I had hired came in, and so they spent a day taking care of a lot of the major stuff, getting mold and mildews out of the coolers, clearing out the cobwebs, polishing off my stainless steel appliances, and so on. And while that cleaning did make a dent, it didn't have nearly the impact I was hoping for. So I continued to clean the place myself, bit by bit, nearly every day for weeks. So as you can see, I put a lot of long hours in here, which didn't leave me with a lot of time for hobbies like cooking and baking, as ironic as that seems. But fortunately, I had some folks to help me take care of that, including this video's sponsor, Wild Grain. Wild Grain is the first ever bake from frozen subscription box for sourdough bread, fresh pastas, and artisanal pastries. Sourdough bread uses a slow, natural fermentation process, which is thought to be easier on your belly, richer in nutrients and antioxidants, and can help lower blood sugar spikes. All of which is definitely not the case with your typical supermarket bread. We've even been experimenting with sourdough here at the restaurant because of the flavor and health benefits it can provide. However, if you've ever tried to make sourdough bread, you know just how much work it is. It can take days to make, it requires constant maintenance and specialty equipment, and it can be pretty tough to get consistent results time after time. But Wild Grain takes all the hard work out of it. Every item bakes in 25 minutes or less, so you can enjoy a freshly baked loaf of bread even on the shortest of notice. And in addition to sourdough bread and pasta, Wild Grain offers other fun treats like cookies, croissants, and they even offer a sourdough New York style pizza now, which as you can see is actually very solid. So to check out Wild Grain, just click my link in the description and use the code Charlie to get $30 off your first box, plus free croissants for life. So thanks again to Wild Grain for sponsoring this video, and thank you for your support. Now let's pick up where we left off, getting the space ready to open. And after all this cleaning, it was time for the part that had probably the biggest impact in terms of aesthetic: painting. The previous restaurant had a very rustic, dark, sort of dreary vibe, which just didn't jive with the fun pizza by the slice restaurant in my opinion. So we painted nearly the whole place white with a couple black accent walls, which just instantly transformed it into the bright, clean, and fun space that I was looking for. The last thing I wanted to do, however, was refurnish the front counters. And since time was running out with about a month until I wanted to open, I knew I had to act fast. At this point, I knew I couldn't do it all myself, so I ended up bringing a carpenter in to tie up all the loose ends for me. And I'm super glad I did, because there turned out to be a lot more work left than I thought. He helped me tile the front counter, finish sanding and staining all the surfaces, and build the nice little alcove seats in the front of the restaurant. We literally finished things up at about 2 a.m. on the day of our soft opening, so the timing couldn't have been better. Shout out to Harry the carpenter for all your help. Now in the meantime, I also had a complete logo redesign, since the previous logo I was using was really just text that I mocked up in about 10 minutes. So I worked with a designer named Steph, who I found through Instagram, and I think she nailed the sort of fun, retro yet modern aesthetic that I was going for. So to tie in with that, we incorporated a lot of orange into the restaurant to really create that cohesive branding and fun vibe. We got orange chairs, neon signs, and we're still continuing to build out the decor here. Obviously, it's not exactly something that contributes to revenue, so with limited funds at the start here, I want to prioritize things that are a little bit more important. But before long, I know it'll be set up the way we want it. Now with the aesthetic elements taken care of, it was time to focus on the fun stuff, the actual operations of the restaurant. Because fortunately, since I had been operating as a pizza pop-up for over a year, I pretty much had all of my recipes dialed in and mostly documented. However, I had never opened a brick and mortar restaurant before, so there were a lot of things that I just had no clue where to start with. Getting permits, purchasing equipment and smallwares, setting up my POS system, and so much more that I didn't even know I didn't know. And for that, I enlisted the help of a guy named Althepizzabuddha. Well, his name is Alistair, but his Instagram name is Althepizzabuddha. Anyways, he's a pizza consultant who I had listened to on a few podcasts previously, and as soon as I heard him sharing his expertise in building out and optimizing pizzeria operations, I knew I would have to enlist his help when the time came to open my own place. I'm a big believer that in order to get ahead, not only in business, but in all aspects of life, you need to be willing to invest. I could have wasted countless hours trying to figure things out on my own, and there are some things that I probably would have never figured out. So it was a lifesaver having him guide me through the process. We worked together remotely for about 10 weeks leading up to the opening, and then he actually joined us on site along with his wife Carly to finish getting the place set up, help me train staff, and make sure things ran smoothly during our opening. So he guided me through the process of obtaining permits, getting some additional work done on the space to comply with health code, setting up our POS, creating systems for service, finishing documenting recipes, and so much more. Another big thing we worked on though was ordering equipment. Because even though the oven and mixer were already in here, some of the coolers needed to be replaced, and since I wanted to lay out the kitchen as efficiently as possible, I basically purchased all new tables and racks for our kitchen. The other major thing I got, which saves us a ton of time and effort every week, was this cheese shredder. Specifically, we got a cheese hog, and one of the owners, Scott, was nice enough to come give us a demo when he brought over the machine. So there are a few reasons we wanted to use one of these rather than just buying pre-shredded cheese. One is that most pre-shredded cheeses contain anti-caking agents, which mess with the way that the cheese cooks. And while yes, you can find some without those anti-caking agents, you're still limited to the shred size that they come in by default, which might work for some people depending on your baking method and oven temperature. But if you've seen any of my content, you know I'm not just trying to make any pizza. I want to make the best pizza in Ohio and eventually the world. So one thing I definitely wanted is to have control over my cheese shred size so that I can control how quickly the cheese melts on the pizza. On top of that, we make a custom cheese blend here using 4 different cheeses, so the shredder can shred each of them with ease. It takes just a couple seconds to get a whole block through here, and from there we can blend the cheeses together in any ratio we like. Cleanup is super easy too, since it doesn't require any tools to put together or take apart. So overall, the shredder has been an absolute game changer for us so far, and I don't know how we would get by without it. I'll leave Scott's contact info below in case you want to inquire about one for your own restaurant. Again, just tell him I sent you and he'll get you set up. So now with all of that taken care of, The restaurant is built out, the equipment is installed, the last thing we needed was some staff. So I posted on Instagram, over here on YouTube, and made a job posting on Indeed. And after filtering through nearly 200 applications, spending a day on virtual interviews, and then another couple days on trial days for cooks, we built up a great staff of about 10 people total. Now, one of the most challenging but also most important aspects of running a pizzeria so far is just communicating the level of quality that we're looking to achieve and training staff to ensure that that level of quality is maintained, even when I'm not able to watch every pizza that goes out to customers. So we spent a couple days with the staff prior to opening just getting the reps in with stretching dough, and with Alistair's guidance as well once he got on site, people started to pick it up relatively quickly. It's still something we're working on for sure though, and while we're busy I always make sure that I'm the one on the stretching station just to make sure that they're coming out perfectly. But overall everyone's doing great so far, and I know it'll only get better and better with time. So you're probably wondering at this point, now that we've been open for a month, how has it been going so far? Well, if you ask me, it's actually been pretty great. Despite the brutal weather we've been having this past month, business has been fairly steady. Being in a downtown area with lots of office buildings around, we always get a solid lunch crowd during the week, and we get lots of natural foot traffic in the evenings and weekends as well, especially when there are events going on down here. On top of that, I get a lot of comments from people like you who either watch my videos or found us on Instagram, so it's just awesome to see passionate pizza people coming in and enjoying something that we've worked so hard to put together. I always love talking pizza with you guys and appreciate you coming in. So really, despite putting in super long hours, I mean, I've been working probably over 12 hours a day for nearly 7 days a week since we've opened. I'm having a ton of fun, and honestly, it doesn't even feel like work most of the time. So really, I can't thank you all enough for the support so far. And if you're ever in the Cleveland area, it would be awesome if you come by and say hi, and of course, enjoy a slice or two. Now in the meantime, if you missed my weekly update videos on Instagram, you can check out a recap of those here. And if you want to see how this all got started with my pizza pop-ups, you can watch this video right here. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next one.